right, y'all. Here we go. In for another installment of the Black Factor. And I ain't gonna lie, I had no intentions of doing another show on today, but in light of recent events, it has become necessary. At least I believe so. We are in a not so good place, y'all. I gotta bring light to a couple of these incidents. Not a couple, but the two incidents that have taken place over the last 24 to 36 hours. And I want to have that discussion, y'all. I want to talk about it. I want to plant some seeds. I want to give some food for thought. I want us to check out and see what's really going on. So y'all hang tight. It seems like every week these days, y'all, I'm having these special edition type shows. But, I mean, it's like, what do you do? There's so much happening. There's so much craziness going on, man. Let me start by saying the very first thing, with this COVID, man, look, y'all better be preparing for this second wave, because at the rate people are going out here, everything is starting to go back up. These numbers is going to start hitting, and they're going to hit real different this time, and I don't think it's going to be good. So let me suggest that, y'all start getting ready for that, because it's coming. I don't think we're going to be able to avoid it. But on to the topics at hand, on to the most important things, and the things that I want to talk about tonight in particular. And the first thing is that I want everybody to take the time to familiarize yourself with a name and a person. George Floyd. That's his name. George Floyd. That is the man who was murdered by the Minneapolis police. This shocking event, and I'm going to say shocking because I am not going to allow our desensitization to everything that has continued to take place, especially in recent years with police brutality and that sort of thing, being brought more to the forefront because of social media. I'm not going to allow it to desensitize me to the point where I don't believe that it is atrocious or it is foul. It is foul and it is atrocious, and it's something that we need to be outraged about. The only thing about that outrage is this. Oftentimes when we become outraged, we point our rage in the wrong directions. It's kind of like how we always manage to ask the wrong questions. And when you ask the wrong questions, you almost inevitably will continue to get the wrong answers. And therefore, the problem at hand is never really solved because it hasn't been approached properly to begin with. Now, George Floyd was a man who was killed by 4, and they're saying 4 because they were all involved, police officers. I'm sorry, did I say Minneapolis and Milwaukee? Anyway, all right. Anyway, point being this. This is further proof that being a black man in America can easily mean a death sentence. It can mean the death penalty. The man was unarmed, and I cannot imagine anything that he did out there on that street that warranted his death. Physically resisting arrest is not a death warrant. That's not how this works. There's a reason, though, why this happened in the way it happened. And it has a lot to do with our history and the way we do things and have done things and what we've become accustomed to in this country for a couple of centuries now. one of the problems is the narrative. Y'all hear me talk about the narrative all the time. You hear me talk about the way things are done. You hear me talk about the way things are handled and the way we deal with these situations. And I'm going to say again, I will not become desensitized. And I want you to also not become desensitized simply because these things continue to happen. However, we do have to become proactive rather than reactive. The problem that I have with a lot of these situations, these scenarios in particular, is because when we see our white brethren do very similar things, according to those police officers, he was resisting arrest initially. So what? How many times have we seen our white brethren resist arrest and live to tell about it? That's part of the game. Criminals don't want to be caught. But we're also not talking about someone who's walking around with an AK-47 strapped to his back. How many times have we seen that? This, unfortunately, is another case of Eric Garner all over again. Before I continue, I'm going to stand up. I want you all to see my shirt. This is one that I created years ago in the Eric Garner death, or one that I put together. I wasn't the actual originator of the art, but I Can't Breathe, which were the words of George Floyd right before he inevitably was killed by police officers. You know, we complain, there's only a certain amount of times when we complain as a people in this country. One of those is right before elections. We make a lot of complaints. Mr. Bourne, Lorinda, Val, Phyllis, thank you all for tuning in. G-Rob, I see you. I appreciate you all. Thank you for checking in with me. Karen, how are you this evening? We complain around election time because we don't like the way things are going, and we start making remarks about the Electoral College, and we talk about who's not, vote doesn't count, and all this sort of nonsense. We complain right after a black man is unarmed and killed in the street, and times like that. The problem is that we're too reactive and we're never proactive. Mr. Thomas, good to see you this evening, sir. We have to be more proactive in the things that we do versus reactive. Why do we wait until it's too late to raise our voice? Voices should be being raised. Let me give you a prime example. We got an election coming up, right? Once this election is over, whatever the outcome, and we know what we all hope the outcome is, but whatever the outcome, that's when it's time to start raising hell. That's when it's time to start trying to figure out the new party that needs to be put into place that opposes the Democratic and Republican parties, the Green parties. This is when the new parties need to be put in, start getting. Matter of fact, not even after the election. Those things need to start now. And we don't need to worry about what's going to happen at this next election because it's damn near all but over. We right here on it. There's nothing that's going to happen between now and then that's going to make a difference other than the fact that you go and you vote. And you vote with a human conscience more than anything else. Now, these are the things that we have to do in order to make a difference. But complaining after somebody is killed or complaining after a person we don't want in office gets there, it's too late. You can raise all the hell you want. It's over. George Floyd is dead. George Floyd should never have died. But what do? Something has to be done from an internal position that keeps these sorts of things from happening. How many black folks have to be sacrificial lambs in order for something to be done? They put their lives on the line hoping that, and unintentionally, by the way, hoping that we will get their back. When we don't get their back, what are we saying? What are we saying about ourselves and what are we saying to them? We have to begin to take care of one another in a much more human way and not continue buying into the narratives that allow George Floyd to be murdered by those who are supposed to be in an authoritative position. Now, we could talk about the bad things and everything that happens all day, but I believe in solutions. So in the cases of these sorts of things, number one, there need to be more laws on the books in regard to hate crimes. We don't have enough of those. We allowed a lot of people to be put into office that effectively gutted the Civil Rights Act. So therefore now we struggle in our own ability to vote in our own best favor. And we sit back like there's nothing wrong. We think that there's not a war to be fought. We are very complacent. Why? Because let me tell you what happened. They stuck the knife in. It was a 12-inch knife. And they pulled it out 6 inches. And they called it progress. And we believed them. We still feel the pain. And we're still bleeding. But we called it progress because they said that's what it was, and we agreed with them. They're wrong, and we're wrong. I want, and I'm going to get to this next part, because one of the laws, and I'm talking about laws that I want to see come forward. Now, I'm going to discuss this next part because I'm going to bring up this other law that I want to see put on the books as well. Even though I think that there are laws on the books like these. However, I want to see them enforced. Because now we have a woman in New York. She's been dubbed Central Park Karen, and I'm going to get to her in just a minute. She should be charged with filing a false report. She should be heavily fined and possibly jailed. But she definitely should get some charges put on her and a prosecution. Once there is costs levied to people, much like criminals, when you do a crime, you have a price to pay. You often have restitution, which is a monetary gift to the state or the United States for your crime, along with the time that you serve. But you should be charged with a crime, and you should be made to pay for that crime. Otherwise, what difference does it make? You can just do as you please, and you think that everything is going to be all right. And this is a prime example of that that we witnessed in this case. And I actually have a couple of things that I'm going to show you this evening. And right here, I'm going to bring in the video. For those of you who have not seen this as yet, I want you to take a look at this situation because it needs to be seen.
Bro, with your feet on his neck, man, you get off the
His nose is bleeding. Like,
yeah,
come on now.
That's raw right there with his feet on his neck.
Look at his nose.
You see your knee on his neck.
Yeah, he got your feet right on his neck.
He ain't even resisting arrest.
I cannot breathe.
You just a grown, you're a tough guy. You're a tough guy, huh?
This video.
I say you're a tough guy. You're not even resisting arrest, bro.
His whole nose is bleeding.
See their faces.
Bro, but why you just sit there?
That
You
cop
ain't
that
doing
has
nothing.
his
Now
knee
put him
on
in
that
the
man's
car.
back.
Kill me.
How long y'all gotta hold him down?
Why you don't do drugs, kids? It ain't about drugs, bro. You know that's bogus right now, bro.
It's almost like he has
You know
a
it's
sense
bogus.
of
You can't even look at me
satisfaction.
like a man because you a bum,
And he's
bro.
very happy.
He's not even resisting arrest right now,
His
bro.
nose is bleeding.
You
Choke
stopping his
this
breathing
man
right
to
now,
death.
bro. You think that's cool?
Like,
Get off of his neck.
still on him, bro.
Yeah, look at that,
Back on the
bro.
street.
Are you serious? Bro, are you serious? And you gonna keep your thing on your neck? He ain't
Look at him.
bro.
Just
You're
sitting
a
there.
real man, bro. You're a real man, bro. I trained
And
for
yet,
this,
while
man.
Fact that you guys aren't
make
checking
it
his
to the
pulse
scene,
and doing
he's
compressions
still
if he needs that.
You guys are honoring
Oh my
everybody.
God.
And then you just
Okay.
go,
They just dragging him like, come
Yeah,
on
and
now.
I have
While
your
he's
name tagged.
handcuffed, no less, throughout that entire situation. Now, at what point does it become ridiculous? It's outrageous, and something needs to be done. Now, thankfully, those 4 officers have all been terminated. I hope and expect that charges are forthcoming. That is what needs to happen next. They need to be charged with murder for the murder of an unarmed man who did not deserve to die face down in the street beneath the knee of what appears to be a slave catcher. My question is, and I want y'all to understand this. I have friends in law enforcement. I have friends who I cherish very much that happen to be in law enforcement. I can say that they are mostly what I would like to refer to as fair and just people. But my question is, because I hear people say all the time, good cops. The all cops are not bad. Here's my problem. If you don't police, if the police don't police the police, what are we in for? There has to be someone in that group, audience, clique that stands up and says, hey, look, I ain't having that. What you're doing is wrong. You're breaking the law. And then, of course, they get to talking about things like the thin blue line or whatever they call it, where they all protect one another. Well, here's the problem. If you call yourself, and I'm speaking to my law enforcement brethren right now, a good cop, and you don't stop your bad brethren, the ones who are the bad actors, the ones who have the horrible behaviors, the ones who don't uphold the law and in fact break it as much as anybody they call themselves arresting. If you don't stop them, I'm sorry, but you're just not a good cop. So I'm waiting to see where the good cops are, because the good cops would have saved George Floyd's life. Where were they? There were 4 on the scene. Now, by law of numbers and averages, I mean, how many police officers are there on a force? And however many there are on a force, and you start naming the bad ones and the percentages starts going up and the numbers get higher, you have to ask yourself, are you telling me this many police officers within your command are basically corrupt? Because if you take an oath to uphold the law, the citizens of any particular city, state, county in this country expect for those to do their job and uphold the law. Well, like I said again, they've all been terminated. That's good cop work right off the top. I want to say that I do appreciate that department for acting swiftly and decisively, because we all know that justice deferred is justice denied. That is Dr. King's words. So we already know what needs to take place next, and that is charges, murder charges. Now, I always get into a history part of any of this stuff that I'm talking about, and one of those things is that a lot of people do not realize that your sheriff's department and a lot of your police agencies are actually the byproducts of slave catchers. A lot of people don't know that. You got to do your homework. But, I had, and y'all know about the black factor. I got a lot of that stuff. It's actually in this book. I talk about the police and the origins of police and the slave catchers. And there were quite a few things that I wanted to read excerpts out of here today that deal directly with what we're seeing right now. But you know what? I don't even feel like doing that today. Because to be honest with you, I had no intention of really going this far today. I really didn't. But I'm going to, because it's necessary. And this was not on my mind like this, but I'm going to do it anyway. My man Tony Bourne always say, I don't have the rights to this music, but I'm going to play it anyway. So y'all, I'm going to play it anyway. That's what we're going to do today. All right. I have a question. How many times have we witnessed on social media, and I want to bring social media into this conversation because there's a point to be made here. How many times have we witnessed our white folks running around out here with AK-47s and AR-15s strapped across their back, and they're walking down the street and no one says anything to them? They go unchecked, untouched, unquestioned. And here's the thing. When black people get pulled over and jumped by multiple police officers for a traffic violation, they're unarmed. The very first thing that you hear these officers say in their own defense is that we feared for our lives. Here's an interesting thing. They feared for their lives. They feared for their lives because the narrative continually dictates that black skin is criminalized. And because the skin is black, the blacker the skin and the bigger the man, the more the threat. Because that's the narrative that has been promoted by the media for many, many decades. But here's the thing. I think they use that excuse to get away with murder. To be able to say, I feared for my life. But let me show you something. When you see those white men who, for example, ran up to the Capitol in Michigan with their military assault rifles, and you see those men out in Arizona who defended that rancher's land against the federal government with assault rifles and weaponry, and you see these sorts of stands taken, you want to know what I think? I think that the police actually do fear for their lives in those situations. I think that's why those people don't get harassed. We could say that it's because they're like them, or they're white, or whatever you want to call it. But I think they're really afraid for their lives, and that's why they don't test them, because they know what they will do. See, they know we ain't gonna do nothing. So whether we armed or not, if we are, that's their excuse to take us out. I believe that they are fully aware of the damage that one white man with an assault rifle is capable of. We've seen the damage done by them time and time again. We've seen them kill multiple individuals in a very short span, in very short, small places. Oh, they gets it in. And they will do it. And we know they'll do it. And so do the police. And that's why they really are afraid for their lives. And that's why there's inaction. They're not going to do a damn thing to them people, because they know them people will do exactly. They will return fire without hesitation. So what does that say about us? See, I have a theory, and that is that if black people were nearly as violent as we've been portrayed in the media and across America, do you not believe that by now there would have been a reckoning? Do you not believe by now that there wouldn't be question about whether or not we did this or did that? You have all these people who like to try as hard as they can to compare the KKK to the Black Panther Party. Well, I challenge you to show me where the Black Panther Party hung, drugged, lynched, killed, murdered any white people, any groups of white people, or anything of that nature. There is no comparison. We already know the damage done by those who wear the white hood, because they have to, and of course they have to hide their faces because they know the retribution will come soon. Sort of like Central Park Karen, who has found it within herself to apologize for her shenanigans on yesterday, which I find very laughable. We've seen what one white man with an assault rifle will do to a elementary school or a church or a movie theater or a high school, and the list goes on, a concert out in Las Vegas, and so on and so on and so on. And in fact, we have become as equally desensitized to those events as we have all of the other events where black people are also being murdered at the hands of those in authority, those who operate under the color of the law, who then backs and defends their actions. I am happy to say that finally, I believe that we are starting to receive some level of justice. That is a good thing, in my opinion. It's not enough, not yet, but it's coming. The fact that the charges were, charges were brought against the McMichael family and William Roddy, I can't think of his last name, Bryant. The fact that they've all been charged speaks volumes in regard to where we are headed, and the fact that people are now beginning to have to deal with what's happening. They can't turn away anymore. One of the things that we're fortunate about is that these videos are sort of like a window into the past. They are our opportunity to get a crystal clear view of our white brethren and their unfortunate God complexes. They're being exposed. Speaking of God complexes, Miss Amy Cooper, who is the Central Park Karen, I don't know who gave her that name, but I don't particularly care for that one. But anyway, Amy Cooper, she didn't like the idea that a black man asked her to place her dog on a leash. She, in fact, was somewhat irate. Let's listen to Amy, and then we're going to talk about her actions and the funniest parts about it and the tragic parts about it as well, because there are some.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking pictures and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me?
The poor dog, she is choking the hell out of the dog while she's irate, because her sensitivities have been tested.
African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm
Poor
sorry,
dog.
I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
And there she was, screaming as though someone was actually going to do something to her. Now,
all right, ladies and gentlemen,
here's the thing.
let's do this.
Oh,
Apparently, there has been.
Here's the problem with that particular situation. She believes that she has the right to call the police on someone because she didn't like the fact that he asked her to put her dog on a leash. Well, it's the law. Now, how many times have we seen driving while black, barbecuing while black, walking while black, sitting in your own home in your underwear while black, and people call the police with their self-righteous indignation, believing that they have every right to infringe upon these people's rights and their lives because they somehow don't think that the black people are supposed to be doing what they're doing. She was so insulted that during this altercation, she almost choked her dog to death. Here's what you got to pay attention to. She used the threat of calling the police on that black man. See, think about that. Think about what that means. She's weaponizing the police. What does this say? This says, you're a black man, I'm a white woman. If I scream to the slave catcher, to the police, because that's what they once were, that's where they came from. Do your homework. Don't believe me. Look it up. I say it every time. If you scream to the slave catcher and you tell him you off the plantation, you're going to be placed in shackles and whipped or possibly hung. See, that's a threat because she know what massa going to do if you get caught. See, even if she did not intend to exercise her white privilege and fragility, she did it because that is her way of saying you are beneath me. In other words, you better be afraid. You have disturbed my peace and you're black and you can't do that. So I'm going to call the lynch mob and I'm going to have them come and get you to save my white privilege and my fragility. How dare you, black man? You are beneath me. You can't tell me to do anything, even if you're right. Why? Because I'm white and you're black. She attempted to weaponize the police, the authority, all at the same time criminalizing black skin. Now, did you notice how bold she was? And I find this funny, ironically and actually. She was very bold in her attempt to threaten the black man with the authorities, all the while calling him an African American. So, in other words, it's okay for me to threaten you with the police, even though you haven't done anything, but I'm going to keep it politically correct, and I'm going to call you an African American while I do it. Come on now. Come on, man. What we talk about right here. See, this is one of those people. And to be honest with you, it makes me question whether or not she actually thought that she was doing something wrong. See, this is that white privilege when they don't know they have white privilege. And then her next words, or what she told her, the statement that she made later to the media was that she was alone and afraid. I think she had an opportunity to mind her business, and she didn't. I think she had an opportunity to obey the law and put her dog on a leash and not disturb the bird watching that was taking place. And it clearly there are clearly signs clearly out there that say, keep your dog on a leash and the reasons why. But, Amy, she took it upon herself to do as she pleased. And, you know, a lot of these, and I'm going to go out on a limb, people who follow the ideology of their commander-in-chief, who believes that he is above reproach and that he can do no wrong, well, them chickens is coming home to roost. Because guess what? Everyday citizens, you don't have the Secret Service behind you. You don't have the political machine behind you. You don't have the lawyers or the courts behind you the way he does. And he won't have them for long. The time is going to come where these types of behaviors and these types of incidents are going to fall back where they belong. Not that they've ever really gone anywhere, but we didn't have as much of an uprising and uproar as we've had in the last 3 years. But trust and believe, a lot of that is about to come to a head. The weaponization of the police is a tool that has been at the disposal of white women in America throughout the history of this country. This time, though, she got caught up. However, it appears that here lately, as of late, she has made an apology about her actions, her reaction, and the outcome of the situation. I'm going to get back to that. But let's think right quick. What would have happened without the benefit of video and social media? Where would this have gone? What would have happened if Amy had called the police on Mr. Christian Cooper? No relation, because her name is Cooper as well, by the way. And there was no video backup. There was nothing to say that Mr. Cooper had done nothing wrong. Will we be looking at another Central Park 5 situation where a man is accused of something that he didn't do and spends time in jail and has his whole life disrupted because a fragile, let me back up. What will appear to be a fragile white woman who plays victim, although she is the villain, where would he be? Would he be fighting charges? Would he have to get a lawyer? Would he need bail? Would he be alive? All because she didn't like the idea that he said to put her dog on a leash. This reminds me of Emmett Till, accused of whistling at a white woman whose body was found days later having been lynched because of a white woman's fragility and privilege, of course. Let's not pretend that this can't happen, because we know that it can, and it has, and it continues to. What about all of the ones that we don't hear about? I mean, we've heard this story play out time and time again throughout the history of America over the last 400 years. And it has played out swiftly and often very deadly. How many Central Park 5 stories have gone untold because of the Amy Coopers of the world? Y'all do know that this is a very similar scenario to how Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, was burned to the ground. A white woman who was bumped by accident claimed that she was assaulted by a black man. An entire community devastated because of the Amy Coopers of the world. So, yet again, I say there should be laws in place and enforced, of course, to deter individuals like Miss Cooper from filing false reports and potentially getting black people killed because her ego, being as inflated as it is, she'd rather see a black man punished than to put a leash on her dog. Imagine that. That's humane, huh? I always talk about the narratives. And the narratives under which we live and have lived for a very long time based on images provided by those in control of information. In other words, and this is where I get back to the social media aspect of this, we've been controlled for a very long time, and so have those around us, by what is seen in the media. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's just entertainment. It is not just entertainment. It's not. If you ask, and I have seen this asked, I have seen this question posed to individuals who have very little or limited exposure to black culture and black community, where they get their ideas about black people and how black people act in the way we are, they will tell you unequivocally they get that information from the media, off of television and out of movies. When we continuously are portrayed in ways in the movies that are derogatory, negative, stereotypical, then other people believe when they meet one of us for the first time or are around us or get anywhere beyond hello, that we're supposed to act a certain way, not knowing that we are not any different than any of them. We all have a lot of the very same issues, problems, lifestyles, livelihoods, but they don't know that. See, the difference between watching garbage on television about black people and watching garbage on television with white people is that they have other images that offset their garbage. We don't. It's kind of like when we talk about crime and how an unarmed black man is killed by police, and then the next thing you hear, the narrative you hear from white people is, well, what about black people killing black people? What about black on black crime? And the sad part about that is that too many black people have actually bought into that BS. There is no such thing. If there is, then there's white on white crime. Please stop using that term. It is garbage. It's a narrative provided by them to make you hate yourself. Stop buying into that. Here's the difference. When black folks kill black folks, somebody get prosecuted. Somebody go to jail. That's the difference. When white cops and white people kill unarmed black people, nobody goes to jail. Well, here recently they have been, thankfully. That's the difference. There's no comparison. And until we get control of our image, we're going to continue to suffer at the hands of those who choose and decide what they think we look like and how act the way they think that we act. So that brings me to this. Let's thank the fact that social media exists today. All of us are consumers of information. All of the images that we've had thus far that have come to us through visuals and audio have been controlled by people other than us. Finally, although we don't control the airwaves and we don't control a lot of that stuff that, provides us the venue to control our image, we do have social media now. Social media has come to our rescue. Social media is finally the thing that is allowing us to have our story told, and we don't even have to tell it. All we got to do is stick the camera in their face. This is the very same tactic that Dr. King used during the civil rights movement. It's not so much that he wanted to be nonviolent because he felt like, oh, be nice to these white people, turn the other cheek. That wasn't it. And I shudder to think that anybody believes that Dr. King was that shallow. No, the reason he used nonviolence was because he knew that the cameras were in their face. He knew that when the rest of the world witnessed the death and destruction and the devastation caused by people of the Caucasian persuasion that the rest of the world would say, y'all are foul. And that is exactly what happened. This is a continuation of the very same narrative. And it's not that we don't want to stand up for ourselves or we won't stand up for ourselves, because we will. I mean, we've seen plenty of people get knocked out on social media for running their mouth. You know you'll get popped in it for cracking out a turn. We already know this. So the fact is, now we have our digital witness that explains the story so that when the outcome doesn't match their happiness, we know that what we did will serve us well. Keep your cameras up. I've heard people say, oh, you shouldn't have been videotaping. You should have been helping. Yeah, somewhat. That's somewhat true. But on the other hand, without that video witness, where's Mr. Cooper today? Without that video witness, what lies would those officers have told that would justify the death of George Floyd? How many countless people throughout the history of America prior to social media and the fact that we all are walking around with cameras in our pocket now? We literally are walking around with an entire office of things in our pocket that once you would have needed an entire desk to hold. We've got it all at our fingertips. And I say, use it, because it is now beginning to pay off. Not quickly, but it's working. Everything doesn't happen in a day. Like they say, Rome wasn't built overnight. But the fact that we are able to show what is taking place, it speaks volumes. The fact is, we now have the opportunity and the ability to have our side told as it actually happened. Even though there are those who would still try and manipulate it, at least we have that at our disposal. Fortunately, social media allows us now to be seen and heard within seconds of pushing a button. It allows us to convey messages instantaneously, to let the rest of the world know that the things we've been saying for decades in regard to our mistreatment and the things that have taken place in the black community, especially in America, are all true. We must be diligent in continuing to use these platforms as long as we are able, because there is no guarantee that we will continue to be able to, because of course we do not control that aspect, that technology. But at the same time, we got to use what we got to get what we want. So it allows us to rehumanize ourselves and keep us from the continued dehumanization from those who have pushed against us for centuries. We live in a very, very different time now. Proof that social media is working in our favor: 4 cops are fired. And it didn't take 24 hours. They are unemployed. And like I said again, I hope to see charges coming behind that. That will be a fantastic thing. Fact that Ms. Cooper is now unemployed. She was an employee of one of those financial firms. In fact, Franklin Waterhouse, or one of those companies she was working for. She's no longer there. The dog, she took the dog and turned the dog over to the shelter I think that she got the dog from, because I think she suffered a lot of backlash for the treatment of the dog during that video. I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, let's keep it 100. That was pretty funny. She couldn't even control herself long enough to keep the dog in check. The dog was all over the place trying to keep her from choking him. Poor dog. But this is proof that social media is working in our favor. She has since apologized, like I said. However, I suspect that her apology is somewhat insincere. This is my personal belief. I believe that she's more sorry that she got exposed and how high the cost is for that exposure and how high it will actually become. Because I suspect that she's going to have a very difficult time finding employment in the near future. Her behavior, however, here's the thing. Her immediate reaction to that man out there tells me something. She's not really sorry. Her immediate reaction was her natural way of dealing with a situation like this, which tells you under pressure who she really is. She showed you who she really is. She can say whatever she wants from this moment forward, but we saw how she get down. Yet another example. Ahmaud Arbery, a victim of our dehumanization. See, you got to remember, every time someone is an unarmed person of color is murdered at the hands of police, one of the very first things that you hear or you see is, well, he was doing this. He had marijuana in his system. He had a criminal record. He's been a convicted felon. He did this. He did that. He got all F's in school. They will find something to try to justify murder. None of which justifies murder. But they want you to believe that this is a bad person, so if he's dead, it's okay. That's dehumanization. It has to stop. Ahmaud Arbery was dehumanized. He's breaking in. We got a lot of break-ins around here. It was break-ins. He looked like the same guy. He fit the description. Come on, man. Stop it. That dehumanization. Dehumanization is necessary for people like that. See, that's how they justify their own evil. They believe that by virtue of having white skin, that they are somehow superior. Well, it's time for all of us to take our image back and be at the table where we belong. Because you got to always remember, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And as the illustrious Professor Reggie Miles, who is with us this evening on this feed, clearly quoted and continues to quote, at the banquet table of nature, there are no reserved seats. You can take and keep what you can hold. If you can't take anything, you won't get anything. And if you can't hold anything, you won't keep anything. And if you can't take anything without organization, you can't. So, as I've always said and continue to say, power concedes nothing without demand. And until we make demands, nothing is going to be gained. I had to get this off my chest today about these two situations dealing with our community here on the Black Factor. I want y'all to understand that every day that I do one of these and I get off a line, my mind almost never shuts off. And I constantly come up with more things that I need to say. I want so badly to be able to interact with each and every one of you and hear your thoughts and try and understand more about our situation, but there's always so much more. There's always so many things. I literally walk around with a notepad, and I walk around with my video camera and my audio recorder, because I have to keep taking notes constantly every day. And then it's like, and I'll be thinking to myself, damn, I just got off. I can't go back on right now. I gotta take my time. And then it takes me a while to compose my thoughts and put them in an order that allows me to make what I say relevant, important, palatable, because there are things that I want to say that I don't say. Now, let's get down to the meat and potatoes of it all. Let me finish with this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to figure out a way. Maybe I can get some suggestions and some help here. I need to figure out a way to make sure that we have laws, a law placed on the books nationally, from state to state or federally, that dictates that an individual cannot file false report, particularly as it pertains to a person of color. That needs to be highlighted, because too many people are losing their lives over the egos of people of non-color. There has to be a way to make that work, or something that will curtail the behavior and the arrogance that allows these people to do as they do. Yes, Bessie Taylor, how are you this evening? Yes, I do take suggestions on topics. I want everyone to do me a favor when you have an opportunity. Please subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and that'll be bmforbes.com. And for those of you on here that are part of my Steppers family, we also have Inside Stepping on YouTube as well. So any of the videos that I do here, you can always go there and check them out. I got to catch up and I got to put some stuff up. But I want to say that I appreciate each and every one of y'all for checking in with me this evening. It is my pleasure to be able to convey my messages to you and hopefully plant seeds of thought and thoughtfulness, and give you the opportunity to help us all make us better. If I can do that, then I've done my job. If I only reach one, that's enough. I'll do that. I want y'all to know I wrote this entire book in hopes of reaching one. I can honestly say that I have reached many more, and I'm very, very excited about that. When I have the opportunity to plant seeds or cause you to go down a rabbit hole of thought and of creativity, then I have done my job. So I thank you for all of that. Sharon, I need to talk to you, since you know a little something about getting some laws passed. We definitely need to chop it up. Thank you for that input. All y'all, look, I got family on here. I got friends on here, loved ones. I got people on here that I hold very dear. I want you all to know that I love you. I appreciate you checking in with me. If I did not absolutely recognize you tonight, charge it to my head and not to my heart. I want to thank everyone, and I'm going to go and find me something to eat. What you say over there? What? Huh? I think I just got snubbed. All right, y'all. Thank you, Regina. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Love, peace, and chicken grease, y'all.